Welcome back to the Bill and Doug Show. It's our Tuesday show talking about our playoff brackets. Doug Lamreese along with Bill Landis. Just so you folks know, Landis is fighting through a pretty severe headache to the point where he does not have his lights in his office turned on because he can't look into the lights. But instead of bagging on this show, he said, I'm going to fight through in the shadows.
Yeah, in the shadow. The lights are too bright for me this Tuesday, but we'll power through. Yeah.
So let's get into it, and I'll try not to like ramble and meander and waste your time like I do the other 364 days out of the year, Bill. We have our 12 teams for our playoff bracket. I will say, Bill, just thinking about this, I don't know if everybody is here at this point, but as you and we are certainly not the only people in college football who think about the playoff bracket. Media, fans, I hope people enjoy it. I hope it doesn't drive you crazy. I hope you think it's fun. But when you do think about it like this, man, I just feel like there are mini playoff play-in games all the time now. I thought USC, Illinois a couple weeks ago was kind of that. I thought Nebraska, Michigan a couple weeks ago was kind of that. Now this upcoming week, I think USC, Notre Dame is kind of that. I think Illinois is
Michigan, Washington,
and then Illinois, Washington the next week is kind of that. Ole Miss, Georgia this week is kind of that.
Just say every SEC game.
Like every SEC game. Right. I mean, Utah-BYU, it's the Holy War. It's awesome. It's 8:00 on Fox, but gigantic.
Texas Tech, Arizona State, I think is this week, right? Yeah.
So I think it flavors up again the people who didn't want an expanded playoff because there is this top tier of teams. Although frankly, I mean, that tier, honestly, right now is Ohio State, and that's it. Like the tier of teams that it's like, oh man, you're going to make the playoff every year. What's the point? It's not that exciting. Honestly, if you thought that tier at one point was like Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, maybe Oregon, like it's only Ohio State right now. And so obviously we're an Ohio State show. We do tons of Ohio State content. So if you're an Ohio State fan and you think, man, it's almost too easy to make the playoff, I don't think that applies to anybody else. And the fight for spot number 2 through spot 22, and only 12 of them are getting in, is a weekly thing, Bill, that really I think is enticing.
Yeah, there are a lot of teams alive, I think, right? And it's fun. I do think you're right. I think maybe Ohio State and its fan base could at times feel like it's sort of going through the motions en route to the playoff. And part of that too is like Ohio State season, like the tenor of it has changed dramatically with the Penn State stuff. So that contributes to it. But I don't know that there's anyone else in that position. You could look at maybe Indiana and just look at like the back half of Indiana's schedule now that it is past Oregon and also like it's also play Penn State and maybe think the same thing. But Indiana's not going to be in that position every year. They just maybe happen to be in it this year. Like Ohio State, I think, until something drastic changes, is probably going to be the team that is consistently in that spot. And everyone else, I think, will find themselves not fighting for their lives, but fighting, I think, week in and week out. In a way that I think is really great for the sport.
So let's get to our picks first. And then I do want to talk about what kind of respect we think Indiana is going to get from the playoff committee, how that all might shake out. You brought up a great point about Notre Dame versus the Big Ten for a playoff spot. But in going through my picks, I did sort of realize that, and it can be very difficult. There's too many sports shows that operate this way. They assume in the future everything is going to go the way you expect while analyzing all the things that just happened that you did not expect. So it's like, hey, we just had a weekend of upsets, but now I'm going to project forward and I think all these teams are going to go undefeated. And it's like, well, you have zero evidence of that because the whole point is this sport surprises you. Given that, just looking at schedules and how teams are playing, I don't think it's impossible that we get 4 undefeated conference champs. That if you look at Ohio State, Miami in the ACC, Texas A&M in the SEC, and Texas Tech in the Big 12, like you start shaking stuff out. And it at least crossed my mind as I was seeding things of like, man, I'm not so sure that we're not talking about some 13-0 teams here, more than one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty. I shouldn't feel good about it, but I don't know if we'll have 4 undefeated conference champs, but I think we can have 4 undefeated teams in the regular season. Ohio State, Indiana, Miami, and Texas Tech. I don't know. I actually went and I suppose I should have been doing this the whole time, but for the first time for these picks, like I did go through the remaining SEC schedule and just kind of like game stuff out. And you're just guessing, right? And it's such a sort of like tightly contested league that it's even hard to do that. But like I didn't end up with anybody undefeated. So, but I do think I don't coming into the year, I probably wouldn't have guessed anybody would be undefeated. And I think there's a real chance we end up with 4.
I mean, I do think when you look at A&M, at Arkansas, at LSU, I think LSU is a fraud. At Missouri, I don't know what to think of Missouri. South Carolina, Samford, and then at Texas to end the regular season. They're favored in all those games, I think. I mean, they have 3 road games against ranked teams. So are they going to go win at LSU, at Missouri, and at Texas? Now, go ahead and listen to my solo podcast on Tuesday night or watch the YouTube show where, I mean, the rankings in the SEC are all a house of cards. And so it's like, I don't actually think LSU is the 10th best team in the country. I'm not sure what Missouri has done to earn this respect, that kind of thing. That's why I thought like, yeah, I could see Texas A&M getting through it. But the bottom line is I do think you kind of have to think that way a little bit, because I'll tell you what I also started to do. Not to jump the gun on stuff. Well, we're just talking. I liked now Arizona State. Sam Leavitt was out the other night for Arizona State. They're a completely different team when their starting quarterback doesn't play, as many teams are. But Utah just destroyed Arizona State. It wasn't competitive, but they got Devin Dampier in the run game. They got 2 running backs they believe in. They still have a good offensive line. I know Utah didn't really hang with Texas Tech earlier in the season, but I just like the shape of the way Utah has looked the past couple weeks. And so what I started to game out a little bit in the Big 12 is Texas Tech goes 12-0 in the regular season and then does not win the Big 12 championship game, for instance, in a Texas Tech-Utah rematch. Or you could think about BYU. This BYU-Utah game is huge on Saturday. Yep. You have to think about Cincinnati. When you think of, I looked at those 4 Big 12 teams. So BYU, Texas Tech, and Cincinnati are all 3-0 in the Big 12, and Utah's 2-1. BYU plays all other 3. BYU plays Texas Tech, Cincinnati, and Utah. Utah plays all 3. They've already lost to Texas Tech. They play Cincinnati and BYU. And so like the only matchup of those 4 teams that is not going to happen is Cincinnati, Texas Tech. So they're playing each other. Like, I'm not sure how it's going to work out. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it could be any of those 4 of them. But if Texas Tech is 12-0 and getting respect all year and then loses to one of those 3 teams in the Big 12 title game, I think Texas Tech's probably in. Like 12-1, Texas Tech is in. Now the Big 12 champ is a bid stealer from probably either the Big 10 or the SEC. And so I originally did my 12-team bracket this week, and I had Utah beating Texas Tech in the Big 12 title game and 2 Big 12 teams in. And then I stared at my bracket and said, this is too hard. So I didn't do it. I backed off of that. But like, for instance, that's what we're talking about with like these mini play-in games in the middle of the year. There is a fight that you don't want to be the 11th team, because all of a sudden, if Texas Tech gets upset in the Big 12 title game, you're out. And that is like a giant chunk of the Big 10 and the SEC that kind of thinking would apply to here in mid-October, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both like Miami, right? But I think you have to watch out for a potential bid stealer in the ACC too.
Yep.
Because like if Miami presumably gets to the ACC title game, even 11-1, and like loses that game, I probably think they're still in too, right? I don't know. I don't love anybody in the ACC to do that necessarily. Florida State's
like
falling off a cliff. Georgia Tech,
I like Georgia Tech.
But wasn't Georgia Tech like losing to Wake Forest and like had the
Georgia Tech's played some really close games lately. Yes,
I know they do that by their nature. I understand that, but the Big 12, I think, you don't want to be whatever, like fighting for that 4th Big 10 spot or 5th SEC spot and see Texas Tech lose, which makes me think Brent Yormark should put in a call to Joey McGuire and Cody Campbell and say, "Hey boys, why don't you take one for the team? lay down in the Big 12 title game so we get 2 teams in."
I mean, it really is, but it just like, yeah, I was staring at it and I tried to do that Big 12 thing, and then I was back to like, is the SEC only going to get in 2? And I was like, I don't want to play that game again. But like, again, for instance, Georgia Tech, 6-0 Georgia Tech, that I still think has a really good chance to beat Georgia in last game of the regular season at Duke this Saturday. Huge game. Mm-hmm. Because if Georgia Tech wants to keep chances alive and it's going to be a race there, like this is so like you should care about, if you're a Big 10 fan, if you're an ACC fan, if you're an SEC fan, you should care about Georgia Tech Duke in a way that you never would have before the 12-team playoff. So anyway,
I think like the ACC, like that. Obviously, Miami is the class, but like you have to keep an eye on Georgia Tech. Virginia is still 3-0 in the conference. Like
Mhm.
Pitt is 2-1 and 4-2 overall. Like, and it's kind of maybe got its quarterback stuff figured out. Like, I don't know. I like
Yeah.
it's that the race for who's going to play Miami now is like suddenly very interesting.
Yeah. So like that idea, and that is this, the idea that there actually might be kind of a dominant team in both the Big 12 and the ACC, and then what if they lose the conference championship game is just has a chance to
Yeah.
blow everything up. So
Yeah.
let's do you first. We
Okay.
reveal our 12 teams for our playoff bracket each week. Go ahead and we'll see where you change this week.
Yeah, I kind of like I didn't even look at what I did last week. I kind of approach this blank slate style and just like kind of
Okay.
game stuff out. So I didn't change really much at the top other than the obvious place to change. So I still have Ohio State 1. I still have Miami 2. I have Indiana 3, which is basically just them replacing Oregon.
Okay.
I have Texas Tech 4.
Okay.
I have Alabama 5. Like, so
Okay.
Alabama right now for me is the SEC champ.
You're bought in.
I am, yeah, I think they're pretty good. I'm like probably foolishly so back in on Texas, so I have Texas 6. Like that, my SEC title game is Alabama Texas.
I don't think that's foolish.
Okay. So Texas A&M 7, Oregon 8, Oklahoma 9. I have Notre Dame back in at 10, Georgia 11, South Florida 12.
Oh man. So how many SEC is that?
5 SEC, 3 Big 10, 1 each from the ACC and the Big 12 and Notre Dame.
Okay. So Ohio State, Miami, Indiana, Texas Tech, your top 4. Alabama 5, Texas 6, Texas A&M 7, Oregon 8. Tell me who was 9 and 10 again?
Oklahoma, Notre Dame.
Okay.
And then Georgia, South Florida.
Okay. So I will say that just in, well, actually, you know what? Let me say this. Let me give you my top 12, and then we can just have the bigger discussion. So I have Ohio State 1, Miami 2. That's the same. I moved Texas A&M up to 3, which I am really considering them as a potentially 13-0 Big Ten SEC champ. Mm-hmm. Texas Tech 4, Indiana 5. So I want to have a discussion about, like, is Indiana just exactly the same as how we were thinking about Oregon before? Because like I had Oregon 3rd. It's like Ohio State and Oregon, undefeated Big Ten championship game. The loser only drops to 3. Ohio State, Indiana, undefeated Big Ten championship game. Is that the same thing? Is Ohio State, Oregon that now would be Ohio State, Indiana? Is it the exact same thing? Will it be viewed the exact same way by the committee? I want to talk about that for a little bit. I say maybe not. So I have Indiana 5. I can't hold out on Alabama any longer. I think this is literally scanning. It's the first time I've had Alabama in my playoff bracket all year. God, they got me. Freaking Kalen DeBoer and his black hoodie got me. I have Alabama 6. I don't like it. Georgia Tech 7, Oregon 8, Notre Dame 9, Washington 10, Yep. Texas 11, South Florida 12. So this is only 3 SEC, 4 Big Ten. I think Washington is super interesting. I really, this stretch at Michigan and then home for Illinois for Washington the next 2 weeks, if they get through that and they only have 1 loss and then they're going into Oregon in the last game of the regular season at 10-1, I think they are in spectacular shape. Their schedule's at Michigan, Illinois, then off at Wisconsin, Purdue, at UCLA, which is like 3 very winnable games, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then Oregon at home to end the year. So like what I'm spelling out here is them losing to Oregon at the end of the year and then being 10-2 with their losses to 2 playoff teams in Ohio State and Oregon. But like, again, I'm on alert for could Washington win that game at home? I think they could win that game at home. If Washington's 11-1 with its only loss to Ohio State, Washington's like the 5 seed. Right. So like we're getting crazy talk then. And then Oregon's going to be the 11 seed. Right. But anyway, this is a reminder of like, I think it could be USC. I actually have come back around. We did a show, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, when our show was basically like, is the Big Ten only going to get 1 team in? It's going to be 1 Big Ten and 11 SEC last week. I've just come back around on, I think what USC is doing, I think what Nebraska is doing, I think what Washington is doing, I think what Illinois still has a chance to do. If Illinois would go win at Washington and finish strong, I think there's going to be a fourth Big Ten team that's a pretty strong 10-2. And I think I feel just much better. And then having gone through the exercise of the Ponzi scheme that is the SEC and how they're just all propped up on themselves with like not actually a lot to it. I am believing more in the idea of the SEC being a bunch of frauds, but also beating themselves up, and the Big Ten having a fourth team at 10-2 that'd be very competitive in the conversation.
Yeah, I can see it happening. My issue just was like as I went through and just kind of did like the win-loss exercise. The only other 10-2 Big Ten team I came up with was Nebraska, but it was a pretty hollow 10-2 because that's 10-2. Obviously, they already lost to Michigan at home, and I had them losing to USC at home. But then I also had like USC losing this week to Notre Dame and losing to Oregon to be 9-3, and it's like, well, are you going to put Nebraska in over a 9-3 USC? No, and then you're going to put a 9-3 USC in over a 9-3 SEC team, and I thought no. Like, I think that there are 10-2 Big Ten teams that would win an argument against a 9-3 SEC, but I don't think it'd be Nebraska just based on the schedule, like what their wins would be.
Yeah.
But like I think a 10-2 Washington, yes, a 10-2 Michigan, yeah, a 10-2 USC, yes. I think any one of those three would probably be in. But I didn't have any of them finishing 10-2.
Yeah. Okay. Let's have the Indiana conversation for a little bit. I do think just kind of, again, I think you pay attention to what other people say. I only care about what the two of us say, so I tune everybody else out. But snippets, bits and pieces, it feels like Indiana has absorbed most of the Oregon mojo, and that people are talking about Indiana as a national title contender. Indiana is a legit team. I feel like the conversation, and again, Indiana in the regular season did not have a win anything close to going on the road and winning at Oregon last year. But the conversation about Indiana compared to last year is completely different. So if I have a little trepidation about like, I don't know, are they exactly where Oregon was last week in your mind?
I think in my mind, yes. And I think in the country's mind, north of the Mason-Dixon line, yes. The SEC is not going to give them much credit, and there's already people trying. I saw like your guy Peter Burns counting up ranked games remaining, as if that's good analysis. But yeah, I think by and large Indiana has replaced Oregon in most people's minds. But I don't think you're off base with putting them fifth, especially if A&M doesn't lose, right? Like. I have my SEC champ as the 5 seed right now. But I think because when I was doing the Ohio State Oregon thing and having Ohio State 1 and Oregon 3, that was like they're not going to lose in the regular season and they're going to play a banger of a Big Ten championship game. And I kind of think in Ohio State Indiana could give us the same thing. So as long as that's the case, then I think Indiana would have a really strong case to be a team that earns a bye without a conference championship. But that would I think would almost certainly go out the window if the Big 12 champ and the SEC champ are also undefeated.
Yeah, I think that's right. But they like everybody are beholden to context, beholden to what other teams are doing. But I think.
By the way, I think sorry to cut. I think their Illinois, like I think them hammering Illinois is going to age pretty well.
Yes, I agree. And now again, we're getting into like. Them hammering Illinois and then Illinois beating USC. And then if USC is good, like all of that, they're connecting the dots. And that's real to me. As much as I think a lot of there's fraudulent stuff in the SEC, you know, like this is a really big game. We'll get to it in a second, USC and Notre Dame this weekend. But like already it's like, well, you know, like USC beat Michigan convincingly. That's a really good win for USC, which props up USC, which means Illinois beating USC is really good. And that props up Illinois, which means that Illinois is pretty good, which means Indiana hammering Illinois props up Indiana pretty well. And Washington, you know, kind of hanging around a tiny bit with Ohio State and then going on the road and coming back at Maryland. And I think playing pretty well right now. That Illinois-Washington winner, I think like Illinois at Washington. So we've established like that USC win helps Illinois. So now Washington, either Illinois is going to go into Washington and people are going to be like, wow, Washington's not an easy place to play. That's a good win for Illinois. Or Washington's going to beat Illinois. And it's like, hey, man, like Illinois only had losses to Ohio State and Indiana. They beat USC. That's a good win for Washington. That's more real to me than a lot of this other stuff that's happening in the SEC. And it's just like accepting that. And I don't know if you listen to the thing or not. I think Washington's better than Ole Miss. Washington's 28th in the polls and Ole Miss is 5. And it's not just
Ole Miss is 5 is crazy. I don't like why. What? Because I truly don't get it. Their resume is like unimpressive.
Nothing. And it's not only that they have a common opponent and Ole Miss beat them by 3 and Washington beat them by 40 in Washington State, but it's part of it. But also, like, we're going to like drool all over Trinidad Chambliss and then not drool over Damon Williams Jr. Like, I think they're very similar teams with similar profiles, and one's 6-0 and one's 5-1 because they lost to the number 1 team in the country. So, like, I'll be very curious.
And the one that's 6-0 barely beat Kentucky, barely beat Arkansas, and like barely beat Washington State, and its best win is probably Tulane.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't like. Yeah, I don't.
So like that. So like that conversation. And now we'll see. Ole Miss is going to play Georgia this week. We'll see how that shakes out. Like if Ole Miss wins, that's a nice win for Ole Miss. If they win, if it's Georgia, then Ole Miss is coming back to the pack a little bit. Like these conversations, I do feel a little better about, Bill, than where we were before. But Indiana just absolutely has a shot at 12-0. Right. And so 12-0. So Michigan State, UCLA, at Maryland, at Penn State, Wisconsin, Purdue. I think they're favored on the road at Penn State at this point, right?
At this point, yeah. Unless Penn State like magically beats Iowa and Ohio State before they play them. And
then the other thing you have to think about again, like with Penn State, for all the upheaval, is like they lost their quarterback. So if they had fired James Franklin, but Drew Aller was healthy, and now, UCLA fired its coach and became a new team. It's like if they would have fired James Franklin, Terry Smith rallies the troops. Drew Aller's like, okay, here we go. Yeah. But now you're asking Ethan Grunkemeyer to do that, and that just seems difficult. So,
can I ask you, just like, I just want to take your temperature on this quickly because you just mentioned them. To the extent that UCLA is a new team, they play Indiana, Nebraska, Ohio State, Washington, and USC before, like, if they're like, I don't know, legit. I don't mean legit like Big Ten contender, although they only have one conference loss. But just legit, like not a pushover like they thought we were going to be. Like they will have a role to play in the Big Ten race.
With I thought you were going to ask
5 teams remaining
if 8-4 UCLA could get in the playoff conversation. Because you want to start going,
whether or not you think any of these teams we're talking about could potentially lose to UCLA.
They lost to Utah, and Utah might win the Big 12. They lost to UNLV, and UNLV's undefeated. And we've been handing that Group of 5 bid to the American champ, but like 13-0 UNLV in the Mountain West would have something to say about that. And what if Northwestern goes 8-4? They lost. So I know we're not actually doing that. But like that's the whole point. And then that's like, how would we view that if that happens? Because who's another fraud is Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is a complete, like, we've underdogged ourselves. This happens in sports. People love an underdog so much. Sometimes they want to accept the underdog as an overdog. And then it's like, you guys still remember it's Vanderbilt, right? And they haven't beaten anybody. And they're 17th because they beat South Carolina with a backup quarterback, and they blew out Virginia Tech, who fired its coach. Like, what are we doing here? There's nothing there. There is nothing that would tell you that Vanderbilt should be ranked higher than Washington, including like the talent base. But we're just all up in our feels about Diego Pavia, about 28-year-old Diego Pavia, and the underdog story of the Commodores. And so we're just ranking them. And again, it's not about ranking, it's about perception. But anyway, Indiana. So like if we were saying before, we think the 3 best teams in the country are Ohio State, Miami, and Oregon. Are we saying now we think the 3 best teams in the country are Ohio State, Miami, and Indiana?
I'm saying it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I am. Yeah.
I still think Oregon is very close in that conversation.
Yeah, and I think A&M. I think A&M's pushing its way.
I think A&M's in that conversation. And like I have to. I didn't think it was going to work at Texas Tech. It's certainly working so far. At some point, I'm going to have to give in on that too and be realistic about it. But also, they have some games to win here coming up. But that Utah win's pretty good.
Yeah, I depending on what if Notre Dame just goes out and like destroys USC, right, and its only losses are to Miami and Texas A&M by 4 points. Yeah. I think they would have to maybe be in that conversation. I know like their resume otherwise wouldn't tell you that, but
Yeah.
I think you can analyze losses and get yourself to that point too. Like, and clearly Notre Dame's getting that respect still. I think rightfully so. But we'll have to see that's what makes this USC game so huge, because it's kind of like really the only other chance we have to see what kind of quality Notre Dame has to it.
So I do think, so to talk about that game, which obviously is incredibly important. This is, so, it's like, hey, USC is pretty good. Watch out Notre Dame. But it's not really that. It's like, hey, USC is pretty good. Thank God for Notre Dame that they have a chance to beat somebody who matters. Notre Dame is 13th in the AP poll right now. USC is 20th. This is quite an opportunity for Notre Dame, and it's exactly what they needed after losing to, like, as much as you were like, oh my gosh, Notre Dame started 0-2. The two teams that they lost to are still both undefeated and looking awesome. So at the time when they lost to, Miami was 10th as Texas A&M was 16th. And now they're two of the top 5 teams in the country. So that's very good for Notre Dame. And they needed somebody good on their schedule to beat, because after USC, it's Boston College, Navy, Pitt, Syracuse, Stanford. No one else is going to move the needle. This USC game, 7:30 on NBC on Saturday, is going to move the needle. Are we at the point now where like 10-2 Notre Dame is definitely in?
I think so. You know what else I just saw is this week that it would help Notre Dame? Boise State plays UNLV.
Oh, okay. So they handled Boise State last week, or 2 weeks ago, 28-7. So for Boise to go beat UNLV, and it's like, hey, actually, that's a pretty good win. That's like the possible Mountain West champ.
Yeah. They still have. I don't think Navy's going to win the American, but they're alive for it, and they play Navy as well.
Yeah, and Pitt's had a pulse.
Yeah.
Pitt's had a pulse, which is just one of those that, like, sometimes you look and say, how do you view a schedule? It's like, well, you really have to view a schedule as opportunity, not roadblock. That to say, like, oh, they have an easy schedule. Once you've lost a couple games, you don't want an easy schedule, because then your wins are meaningless. Once you've lost a couple games, you want a hard schedule so you can prove yourself. So I think, as bad as an 0-2 start was for Notre Dame, I think almost everything has broken their way since then. Do you agree with that?
Yes. The teams that they've needed to help them, I think, have helped them. They've obviously handled their business with, like, just they've controlled every game they've been in. I think like the NC State game was a little slow going, but they ended up winning 36-7. So they've basically done what they've had to do since losing those 2 games, and I think they're pretty thankful to both Miami and Texas A&M that they have continued to look very good.
I had said a lot in the preseason about, like, man, I just can imagine like there being 13-9-3 teams and 3 of them get in or whatever. It's like, is the roadblock, is not the roadblock, is the group actually going to be at 10-2?
That's kind of what I ended up with. Yeah, like I only have, and like everything I gained out, the only 9-3 team I have in is Georgia.
Okay, so it depends how good you think Texas A&M is. You have Texas in, but you have Texas running the table to get in at 10-2.
Yeah, so beating A&M and getting to Atlanta. Yeah.
So like I have Texas in, but I think I have Texas in at like 9-3, and that, like, they look good in the second half of the year. 2 of their 3 losses are to Ohio State and Texas A&M. The other one's a blip, and then they go beat Georgia on the road, and that stacks up pretty well. And like they win the 9-3 battle. But do you think so? This game is funny. It's like, you and I are accustomed to talking about college football in a north-south way, in a northern thing. This game is like USC Notre Dame is the Big Ten against Notre Dame, because if Notre Dame beats USC, then they absorb a lot of the USC stuff. And then if USC goes around and beats some other Big Ten teams, then it's, well, but Notre Dame beat USC, and then USC beat Michigan, or USC beat Oregon, right? Whereas if USC wins, it probably knocks Notre Dame out. Notre Dame's not getting in with 3 losses. And then that's a great win on the road for USC, which means either USC is in great shape to get in the playoff, or somebody who beats USC is going to absorb a lot of good feeling.
Yeah, like because the only Big Ten teams I'd entertain getting to 11 wins are Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon, right? So like everyone else below that, if Notre Dame beats USC and we assume they're 10-2, they just like vault to the top of that list of 10-2 teams that would get, like, and like you almost leave the SEC teams out of it. It's like 10-2 Notre Dame and like any other 10-2 Big Ten team. And that's not a spot that I think those Big Ten teams would want to find themselves in. So it's not like I don't think it's cut and dry. Notre Dame wins this game, and the Big Ten's definitely not getting a fourth team in, but I think it would be pretty close to that territory if that's what happens.
What a way. And isn't that exciting? What more
Yeah.
stakes would you want? This is a great rivalry. We've been having all these rivalry talks all year about should USC, Notre Dame continue. And then it's like, oh, by the way, it's two top 20 teams that have a tremendous amount on the line. Not because they're undefeated and perfect, but because one has 2 losses, one has 1 loss, and they're good and they have a chance, but nothing's guaranteed. And guess what? They're 2 of the 20 teams that we're talking about in that way in mid-October, and ain't that good for ball.
What do you think? I don't love these conversations because we don't really know, but like a conversation between 10-2 Notre Dame and 10-2 Michigan with a win over Ohio State. Well, would have lost to USC.
Yeah, I think to beat Ohio State would be such a vaulter. I think it's. I mean, you think about. Indiana just vaulted, right, by beating Oregon.
Right.
To beat Ohio State is a vaulter that I think like you almost ignore anything else. It's the best win in college football.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you beat Ohio State right now, it's the best win in college football. So if you're a 10-2 team with the best win in the sport, you're like the 6th seed.
Yeah. I think that's right. But it'll be fun to talk about for a couple of days.
But like also like how exciting and interesting, not that Ohio State, Michigan needs extra stuff. No. But like if Michigan only has 2 losses going into that game, like they're not just playing to like spoil their rival season. They're not just playing because those teams hate each other. There's real stakes for both teams.
That's what makes this Michigan-Washington game so interesting, because I don't think Michigan's going to lose to Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, or Maryland.
Right.
So if they beat Washington and then, they show, or I guess it's in Ann Arbor, but they're going to be 9-2.
Yeah. No, so we have Notre Dame, USC, and then we have USC, Nebraska later, and then we have Illinois, Washington later, and we have Washington, Michigan right now. Like those are some absolute season-changing games involving some very good football teams that we have to be laser focused on. And we already saw, like when we got that before, when we got USC, Illinois before, it was decided on a field goal in the last play of the game. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what we're looking at with a bunch of these. Again, I don't know that anyone has to stick up for the 12-team playoff anymore, but in a world where if it was a 4-team playoff instead of a 12-team playoff, we would be talking about whether Indiana would get in or not. Because we'd be talking about, well, if Miami, Texas A&M, Texas Tech all go undefeated, and then the Big Ten champ is undefeated, then the Big Ten championship game loser between 12-0 Ohio State and Indiana is out. And like, is that better? Is that better than we're talking about 20 teams right now who are fighting for spots 2 through 11, and all these games absolutely matter every week to shake that out? Georgia Tech, Duke matters for that. I think this is better.
Yeah. I think this is better. I think briefly, just because I don't want to completely gloss past it, like the G5 spot. Don't discount the Mountain West. I think we've been doing that a little bit. So UNLV is 2-0 in the league. Boise State's 2-0 in the league. San Diego State is also undefeated.
Boise State's not getting in though. I think Boise State didn't beat Notre Dame and they lost the head-to-head with South Florida. That was like the.
But what if it's not South Florida? Oh, I guess it doesn't matter. It's the league. They represented the league, I guess, against Boise.
Yeah. So I think Boise's out. Like UNLV doesn't have the same thing, but I think in a tiebreaker situation, and you and I talked about it at the time, we just thought that South Florida Boise State game, it's not a play-in game, but that really mattered, I think, for the American champ versus Mountain West champ conversation, because you don't often get games like that. I agree with you. If UNLV's 13-0. Then I think it's a conversation. Outside of that, I'm not sure that it is. I think it's the American champ.
San Diego State's got to win against the power. I mean, it was Cal, but like if they only have 1 loss,
yeah.
By the way, so UNLV Boise is a big game in the Mountain West this week, and in 2 weeks we get South Florida versus Memphis, which is huge.
Oh, that's
maybe
huge.
The biggest G5 game of the year. Yeah.
Okay. Although Temple Navy would be the biggest G5 game of the year.
I can't believe Temple blew it.
Heartbreaking fashion. I flipped it on. If you didn't watch it, Navy had a 4th and 1, and they converted the 4th and 1, and it would turn into a 51-yard touchdown run. And then they went for 2 and won, and got
respect, by the way, because they were going to kick the extra point, and they called timeout. And it's like, no, we're going to go for the win, and then they won.
Yeah, So anyway, a lot of good ball out there. All right. Hope you feel better, Landis. If you guys want to go check out the good folks at roback.com, RHOBACK.com, game day collection, great college football gear. Get something a little stylish, something little more upscale. Maybe you're not buying 10 things like that, but like it's a great gift. It's a great treat for yourself. Maybe you can say like, hey, if Ohio State wins this week, I'm going to buy myself a Roback, right? Like make little bets with yourself, right? You don't only have to bet $2 on your app, on your betting app. Like make a little bet with yourself. Reward yourself for your team's greatness, right? If there's a Notre Dame fan watching right now, or pick a big game and say, man, I'm going to be so excited if they win. I'm buying myself a Roback. Or maybe if they lose and I'm so sad, I'm buying myself a Roback. So then if they win, you're happy. If they lose, well, at least you get a cool quarter zip out of it. So roback.com, and then we're giving you 20% off. 20% off your first order. Use the code BAD20, code BAD BAD20 to get 20% off your first order. Landis, we hope you feel better, man.
Thank you. Actually, talking has made the headache recede a little bit. So
that is actually the opposite of what my wife says to me when I talk. So that's the first time in my life that me talking has helped someone's head feel better. So, although I guess you said your talking made you feel better, not listening to my talking. So
it was both. I'll give us both credit. Yeah.
It was both. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks to you guys for being here. Tuesday, playoff brackets. Friday, national picks. Thursday, Ohio State breakdown for their game against Wisconsin. We have a great big theme show scheduled for Wednesday on our Substack page. For our Substack subscribers, you can check out BillandDougOSU.substack.com. But we're just glad you guys are here. So thanks for hanging out. For now, he's Bill Landis in the shadows. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was the Bill and Doug Show.